resource person. Over to
Be-
Maya Kulkarni.
Before we proceed further, please note that this session is been recorded purely for the academic reason with no commercial and financial implications. We have obtained the permission of the of the resource person for the same. You continuing to be in this session after this announcement will be considered as your approval for recording and for uploading it on our social media platforms. Thank you. Over to you, Maya ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Every child deserves to feel safe. Incidents of abuse against children are very common and can occur at any place. In the wake of rising cases of sexual abuse against children, the POSCO Act 2012 was enacted. It contains provisions regarding protection of children against sexual assault. To talk in much more detail about this act, please join me in welcoming our esteemed guest for the day, Ms. Yashaswini Basu. Yashaswini Basu is a human rights lawyer currently working as the outreach lead of Nyaya, India's first open access digital resource that provides simple, actionable, reliable, accessible, legal, that is, Saral information. She graduated in English literature from Lady Sri Ram College for Women and holds masters in international and competitive law from SOS, that is University of London. Welcome, Yashaswini Basu madam. Over to you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this warm welcome and wonderful introduction. I'm very happy to be here. And this is my second time that I'm engaging with you, although there's been a gap of 2 years, but really great to see your commitment towards this cause of inclusivity and promoting the rights of persons with disability. And this is a very important topic that we are discussing today in terms of the rights of children with special needs. Or firstly, in legal terms, I just want to say, in terms of assuring the legal rights and the laws that are relevant to children with special needs, the term disability is used. But I think in our everyday understanding, we should not treat these as disabilities or treating the children with special needs as something that sets them aside. It's different. It's something that we need to celebrate and also provide them with adequate care and protection so that they can unleash their potential. It doesn't mean that these children do not have potential. They are as talented and as qualified and as equipped as anyone who has been fortunate to be born without any disability. So keeping that thought in mind, just to start with two small points, that a law does recognize that our there is a need to sort of there's a need to acknowledge the requirement, or acknowledge that the need of people with the need of people with any sort of mental illness is to be treated as a disability, and therefore an act was introduced in this act. Basically, the Mental Health Care Act of 2017 talks about the specific needs of.
Sorry to interrupt, but you haven't screen shared your PowerPoint.
Okay. Sorry. Just give me 1 second. I just do that. Sorry. 1 second. You can't see my screen yet, right?
No, we can't see.
Okay.
If you're trying again, then stop share and then try again.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Yes, we can see it now.
So I want to go into presentation mode.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yes.
we'll start and yeah. Okay. So just before starting onto our, so continuing with what I was saying is that two acts were passed in between 2017 and 2016 and 2017, which focused on the rights of persons with disabilities and persons with mental illnesses. So these are legislations which tend to tend to focus on the rights of the people who are in these situations, not to discriminate against them, because our constitution guarantees equal opportunities and protection against any form of discrimination on any ground, right? So anybody who has some sort of physical or mental disability is not at par in terms of ability and responsiveness with anyone who doesn't have these disabilities, cannot be deprived of any opportunities. So these cover some of the civil rights, political rights, and basic rights also. So in today's presentation, we will talk about what are these rights, or what rights under these acts are applicable to children. And another act that I want to mention about is that of the Right to Education Act passed in 2009. This act also guarantees the education rights of people, of children with disabilities, even when there is even when there are certain handicaps in terms of access, in terms of schools or college admission, stuff like that. Yeah, and as the introduction said, please feel free to raise your hand and stop me if you have any questions. So with that, let's start. So basically, a little about the organization I work with. We at Nyaya, we recognize that the law, statute, and the law that is mentioned in our books are often given in a terminology or used in, or specified in languages which is heavily jargonized. The reason why we are having this session in the first place is because I am having to sort of break down what the law says, what your rights are, etc. But that shouldn't be the case, because the law is for everyone. So anyone who wants to know about their legal rights should be able to access the law, read it by themselves, and understand and act upon it. But because there is so many information, such nuances involved with every right, every law in our country, that it becomes difficult for anyone who's not, gone through the rigors of, say, a law school or is a practicing lawyer to even understand. And even for us lawyers, one honest thing is that we don't know anything and everything under the sun about every law. We sort of, through practice and constant reading, we have sort of gathered the knowledge about specific areas of law that we practice in. But there is a constant need to sort of go back, read, understand what the law says and where it can be applied. So it's a very complicated process. And imagine that for common people, the difficulty in accessing it becomes a real thing. So in order to bridge this gap, Nyaya, which is an open access digital resource, we provide simple, actionable, reliable, and accessible legal information, which is an acronym for SARL for us. And these are available on our website, on our social media platform, in the form of very simple legal explainers. So if you go to www.nyaya.org, you'll see legal explainers on all topics. So everything that I'm discussing today is available on Nyaya's website. So please feel free to go and refer to it if you need any questions, or even in the going forward, if you have any legal problems that you want to understand what your rights are and what are your legal remedies available, please feel free to come. You're very welcome to come on our website. And also we have a helpline, which I'll shortly talk about. You can reach out to us if you have any questions. And, basically we enable the citizens to feel empowered with this legal knowledge, so they don't have to ask any other persons or a lawyer just for information. One second. Okay, I'm not able to change slides. Yeah. So the process in which we work is we realize that if you see that there is a legal problem. Sorry, one second. Just using the spotlight. Yeah. So if you see there's a legal problem now, and lots of people have legal problems, then the awareness, once you have the information, half of these people have the information so they can move a step forward. And this, even with the knowledge of this information, half of these people can access this information. And even further, lesser number of people can afford to go forward with this information. Ultimately, the process is so complicated. Probably out of this entire group, only 1 or 2 people can actually pursue justice and get justice. So what we do instead is anyone who has a problem, we provide them with resources to come directly up there, overcoming financial burden. So we provide content about the legal resources in their language. We provide practical guides like, this is the law, these are your rights, and these are where you need to go in order to implement it or claim it. There is audio and video content, realizing that only a few people in India can read and write, and even further can read further, and even lesser number of people can read in English. We have these community resources and these simple legal explainers to appraise you about your rights. So as a result of which, what happens is, one can easily know which legal path to take and get their rights fulfilled. Just a little bit about the kind of work we have done. We have reached over 1.5 crore people and built an online community of 1 lakh users. We have close to 600 pieces of content, legal content in English, Hindi, and Kannada. And we constantly do this with partner organizations, because we know that as lawyers, we are creating information. But if we don't understand the need and the grassroots reality from NGOs who are working in this field, then we will never really reach our target audience. Just to give you an example, whatever legal information we create on, say, POSCO, we need to sort of partner with an organization like an ARPAN or an Enfold Trust to understand that, okay, this is basically what the type of clients, this is the type of information the clients or people who are actually suffering from these situations need, and then cater to that. Otherwise, we'll just become like any other law firm. So that's why we try to inform our content in a way that it responds to the audience needs perfectly. In our network, we have 300 lawyers and law students who provide pro bono legal information through the Access to Justice Network. And so far, we have supported over 2,500 individuals through our Ask Nyaya helpline. So that's about us, and quickly about the helpline. This is a WhatsApp helpline. So our WhatsApp number is 96501 08107. So if you ever encounter any legal problem and need legal information about it, please feel free to reach out to us. We will respond to you with the question, with the answer. The only disclaimer is we don't represent you on court, but we can guide you to the process and connect you with lawyers who can. So that's about Nyaya. Now let's come to the topic at hand, child safety with focus on disability. I will come to the question of the safety disability factor. But one thing that I must begin with is that all the child safety factors that I'm going to discuss now are also applicable to any children with any disability. With them, in their case, there are some additional rights that we will discuss. But anything that you see here, all the laws that we are discussing are also applicable to children with disabilities and children with any sort of mental illness. So far, any questions? Are you with me just to understand?
Just a request to repeat the WhatsApp number again.
Sure, Dr. The WhatsApp helpline number is 96501 08107. Maybe I can just write it on the chat box also.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I'll just write it on the chat box. So yeah. This part is clear that every law that we are discussing right now is also relevant, to both children with or without disabilities. So this part is clear, right? Okay. Thank you, Rubina ji. So before we go on to what the law says, let's just take a look at the scale of the problem. So we can see in 2019 and 2020, which were the beginning of the pandemic years, an average of 129 cases are reported under POSCO daily. So POSCO, we know, is basically the act we will discuss in detail shortly, is the act which deals with the offenses related to sexual crimes for children, right? And under POSCO itself, 129 cases in India were being reported between 2019 and 2020. And we have given, if the rate of increase in domestic violence is any indication, we have every reason to believe that POSCO cases have also increased phenomenally during the pandemic years also. Probably the only difference is that the NCRB, the National Crime Bureau, Records of Crime Bureau, does not have a data that they were able to conduct during the pandemic year. So we are awaiting that. But a fair warning is this number is probably going to double up. So you can imagine that 129 children are abused on a daily basis in India. If we have to take a total annual average, 47,000 cases were reported in just this under this act in that year. And another thing is, as law practitioners, what we notice is often these acts happen to two factors. One is people are ashamed to talk about it. So many families suppress the incident and they don't report. Secondly, some people don't even have the resources, or that this can be reported even. And even if they do, police is not cooperative. They don't lodge FIRs and then it doesn't go to the court. So this number is also lower than what is actually happening. So it's a grave reality. And when I talk about children, I not only mention children who are, toddlers or babies. Anyone under the age of 18 is considered a child. So you can see that this POSCO and rape cases and sexual abuse cases are very, very rampant and common amongst college going, high school going girls and boys. So teen age is another area, time of age gap group, which is highly susceptible to sexual abuse. So this is an act that the people from this age group, or family members of this age group, can or must be wary of or pay attention to. Another data is that between 2017 and 2020, girls constituted about 97.1 to 97.
I think connectivity issue. So
Yes,
let's
ma'am, I guess. Yes,
yeah,
ma'am.
just hold on for a minute, because as she said, she's traveling and not in Mumbai.
Yeah.
And usually the process is that once a complaint is recorded, there is a whole process. The FI after the FIR is lodged, the police conducts the investigation and files a charge sheet before the court. In other cases, it always takes a lot of time, and sometimes there's delay. Sometimes the student doesn't go through. But one good thing is, because of the rigors of this POSCO Act, 96.3% of the cases reported under the POSCO Act were charge sheets were filed under it. So we know that the law mechanism or law justice delivery mechanism is very strong in this. But even then, the cases are really rising. And what I would like to mention is that often children with disabilities, if they are deaf, they're mute, they're not able to communicate what has happened with them. So understand that in this figure, although we don't have exact data, a huge number of people will be children with disabilities. So it's a very sad situation, but let's see what the law says. So this is the POSCO Act. And it was enacted in 2012 with the main focus that they wanted to protect children from any offenses of sexual assault and make the redressal process fast. Now, we all know that law as a process can be very tedious. It goes on for years and years, and there is always a tendency for cases to drag on. Often we have noticed that children who have undergone sexual abuse are now fully grown adults, and we've still not gotten justice. Now, having said that, one point is POSCO lets you file a complaint of a past offense even after you've become an adult. So under other cases, under other offenses, there is usually what we call a limitation period, meaning that there's a specified time, short period of time, few weeks, few months, between when the case has happened and when the case can be registered or filed. But POSCO has a broader sort of period of time for you to record this case, because the law acknowledges that not always a child has the definition to understand or identify this as a crime. It takes years for them to gain courage to actually come up and speak about it. And it's all the more difficult for children with disabilities. So that is why this becomes a very, very important sort of a factor about this POSCO Act, that even children who may have undergone abuse many years ago can raise a complaint under this act. Some of the key features of this POSCO Act is that it specifically defines what is a crime that can be reported under the act. And because courts even for adults, it can be so intimidating, so scary and frustrating. A child will probably never open up and get scarred for life if a child is dragged to a court. So that's why there are special child-friendly courts for hearing POSCO cases. Now, that if you want to ask that where is this court, these are court rooms basically, which are designated within the court buildings. In Bombay, you will get that in the City Sessions Court. You will get that in the Doshi. There are specific rooms which are different from the regular courtrooms. You will have paintings. You will have colors. You will have a support person there to make sure the child is calm, to make sure the child is comfortable. And even the judges who hear these cases are sensitized to be child friendly and not be their regular, very intimidating self. And the POSCO lists down a timeline, a very strict timeline for dispensation of justice. So if you have a specific case registered, unlike other cases which drags on and on, POSCO cases have to be, on paper at least, disposed of within a fixed period of time. But due to several factors, the reality is different. Sometimes POSCO cases also drag on. But the Act says that this has to be promptly dispensed, and this is to be treated with urgency. So far, any questions?
Ma'am, I don't have a question, but just remind me when before slide 9 so that I can share the poll.
Sure.
Thanks, ma'am.
No
To
problem.
everybody, please keep posting your doubts and comments in your chat box. So if not in between, but we will address them at the end.
Yes, absolutely. And just a request to, because I'm sharing my screen to the team, if you could also keep a track of the questions that are coming in, and just feel free to unmute yourself and let me know if there's a question. I'll answer them.
Sure.
Okay. So that's about POXO. Now, as I said, this POXO, the act, which is protection of children from sexual crimes, sexual offenses, it defines what is the specific type of act or crime that can be complained against in under this act. But before often one thing we have to realize that take examples of children with disability and even children with mental health illnesses, or just children who are, unaware of the ways of the world. It's not easy for them to recognize what is happening with them. And often the data reveals that most of the perpetrators under sexual or under POXO or sexual offenders are known to the children, maybe from their family, maybe from their extended friend circle, maybe in schools. So these are mostly trusted persons who then abuse their trust. So children feel scared and they're also confused whether or whom to talk about. So it's important for us caregivers to pay close attention to their behavior and understand and approach them if they are going through something. So some of the symptoms of sexual abuse wherein children may not have explicitly and come and told you whether that they have undergone this, there are some indications that you can keep an eye out for. One is that a child, shows unexplained injuries in private body parts, which you don't understand how that area could have gotten injured, and the child also doesn't tell you anything. The child walks and sits with difficulty, so there is some change in the movement. Children are energetic, so they should be able to, constantly be jovial and be able to walk and run without any difficulty. But if you see that, then you should, be ready. And another thing is, medically, if there's any sign of unexplained bleeding from the private parts or any scars, you should, talk to the child. Sleeping difficulties and very unlikely fatigue, that's also another indication. Then a child refuses to go to school or, to attend any social function. And one very strong indication is if the child behavior, changes in terms of sudden aggression, sudden sort of behavioral change, or this child, behaves very differently in front of, say, one particular relative or one particular person, and shows signs of discomfort, then you should probe into it and ask what is going on. Sometimes children, this is for smaller children, they develop habits of thumb sucking or, wetting the bed, which is beyond the, normal age of such behaviors. That is a medical indication. And these are all NCRP, the National Commission for, not NCRP, National Commission for Protection of Children, NCPCR, symptoms which the commission itself has given out. So these are basically listed and formalized by experts. These are some very subtle signs, but you should, pay attention to what's happening. Now, last 2 points are slightly for older children. Often younger children don't even know what is happening with them. Sometimes older children, in order to be, in order to keep this as a secret, are often bribed. So if you see a child is suddenly getting a lot of money and, gifts, etc., you should ask what this is and where this is coming from. And attention to appearance, etc. There is this change in a very unchildlike approach to appearance is also another cause of concern. Now, one more thing I'd like to mention, and this is specifically for older children, say children above the age of 15. So between 15 to 18, because most children hit their adolescence puberty, sometimes they are sort of convinced that this sort of an act is consensual, that they are also being pleasured and this is not abuse. Often they are, told that, okay, this is an expression of love. But one thing we have to keep in mind, that even if the child agrees to this sort of agrees to any sexual intercourse, any sexual interaction, so long as the child is under the age of 18, this will be considered an abuse. The Indian law does not recognize consensual sexual act for children under the age of 18. So any sexual abuse or any sort of sexual intercourse or interaction or any sort of sexual behavior, even if the child says that this was with their consent, is going to be considered a crime under POSCO and a sexual abuse, because any sort of any children under the age of 18 is considered to be incapable of giving consent. And this also ties up with, say, child marriages, which is again legally banned. But if you see, we know that it happens, and if you see that this is going on, and if you know that a child who's gotten married and is pregnant before she is 18, this can be reported under POSCO. So is this okay? Any questions? Okay, I'll take that as a no, and I'll proceed to what are the offenses under POSCO. So, as I said, that sexual abuse is not really a monolithic, uniform act. It's very difficult to identify, but this act has attempted to at least break it down into more identifiable sort of, markers and define specific punishments. One is penetrative sexual assault and aggravated penetrative sexual assault, where there is penetration on young children by the abuser, and this is considered to be the aggravated means where this is considered to be a very grave form of sexual assault, where the child gets injured, and sometimes a child is often, the child may even lose their life. This is basically the counterpart to rape in adults, and minimum of 10 years to for imprisonments when it comes to victims below age of 16 years, and for victims of minimum of 10 years of imprisonment for anyone, any child, and for victims who are under 16 years, minimum of 20 years, which can even extend to, say, life imprisonment. Then you have section 8 and 10 of the Act, which talks about sexual assault and aggravated sexual assault. Now, your penetration may not have taken place, but there can be other sorts of assault where undesirable, inappropriate touching, and there can be sort of other sort of often oral sex, etc. That is also considered an offense, and this leads to an imprisonment of 3 to 7 years along with fine. Depending on the scale of the crime, this can even be harsher. Sexual harassment is not, it may be not just physical, but if a child is being harassed, say stalked, or commented at, or any sort of discomfort being caused, under sexual harassment, and this will be go up to the age of 3 years. Now,
I think there is some connection issue again.
Yeah, I think we'll hold on because she'll get back. Meanwhile, Sheetal, reminder to you to keep an eye on the chat box, please.
377, unnatural offenses. Now, one update is that section 377 basically was a section in the Indian Penal Code which described any sexual act between male or female, or any sexual act which was not between a male and a female, as an unnatural offense. Okay, so basically criminalized homosexual sexual relationships. In 2019, through an act, through Supreme Court judgment, which is the Navteej Singh Johar versus Union of India, this was struck down. It was said that if any consenting adult is willing to, is engaging in any sexual activity with the same sex or person of the same sex, it will not be considered a crime. However, this section still stands when it comes to children. If a person is being abused through an unnatural offense, which is mostly through sodomy, through penetration with grievous objects, this is still relevant, this is still punishable for children, because children under 18 years are not, any sort of sexual activity for children under 18 years is not recognized. So any this section, while it's inapplicable to adults, if it happens with children, you can also file a complaint under section 377 of the IPC along with POSCO, and it will lead to an imprisonment of 10 years minimum. These are mostly the sexual abuses, but you can also have offenses which are related to suppressing an information, to attempt to sort of commit offense, or even reporting offense. So if you assist anyone in suppressing information, stop someone from reporting an offense, that also makes you guilty, and you would be liable to imprisonment. So this is basically the types of offenses, and I'm again mentioning that these are all covered, or this also includes children with disability. And the additional right is that is guaranteed to children under, or the rights under the right to persons with disability, is that there will not be any additional discrimination, any stigma levied upon them, just because sometimes people make fun of their disability, and that becomes a ground for sexually abusing them. So that is a punishable offense, in addition to all the offenses that we discussed. Is any questions? I think there are questions on the chat box. Can the team please help me?
You there, Sheetal? Will you be able to read it? There was one question which I read, Yashaswini, is about the time. When can be, what is the limit of days in terms of filing a complaint?
So can be registered much later. Yes. So this usually the limitation period is described under every act, but under POSCO you can basically seek an extension showing extenuating circumstances. I'll tell you. Give me 1 second to just give you the exact time. The reason I'm checking is that there has been a new Supreme Court order which is which has changed the limitation period. So I'm just going to check that 1 second.
Yeah, and also a sub point there is, even if the offense took place earlier, before the law was passed, would that mean even years before the act was passed, it is applicable? That's a sub point.
That's correct. So this is called as retrospective effect. And POSCO has the retrospective effect. So even if you underwent abuse before the act was passed, you can file a complaint under POSCO. Bear with me for 1 second, and I just want to check the exact, the new Supreme Court order. I want to give you the latest, latest.
Sure, sure.
Okay, so in 2018, so okay, going back to the POSCO Act, under section 19 of the Act, the procedure for lodging a complaint was listed. Now, out of that, under that section, the time limit was not specified. What was specified is that in order to proceed procedurally, in order to process with under POSCO Act, you have to follow the procedure mentioned under the Criminal Procedure Code, which is CRPC. Now, in CRPC, usually the general understanding is that if there's a crime which attracts punishment of under 3 years, then you will have to sort of you'll have to lodge the complaint within the specified period of time which is given under the limitation period of every act. But if there's a crime whose offense can lead to an imprisonment of over 3 years, then you can file a complaint even beyond that limitation period and show the circumstances. Now, so till about 2018, this was the practice that was being followed for POSCO also. But what happened in 2018 is the Ministry of Law and Child Development, they came up with a notification which removed any limitation period for POSCO, which means now anyone who may have undergone abuse as a child and is now fully adult can raise a complaint against the person even in retrospect. And as I said, that it doesn't limit to say crimes or offenses that has taken place only after 2012. You can file complaints even in cases which has taken before the time that this act was passed. So the limitation period is not applicable in POSCO. Let me check for any other questions.
No, I guess we can move on.
Okay. Okay. Now this one is basically to tell you about how the court acts, okay, in terms of what is the process of the child sexual abuse. Sorry, just give me 1 second. I want to see if I've crossed my whole time. Sorry.
Slide 9, right? Something like that you had said.
Yes, right before slide 9, and this is slide 7. So that's okay. Sorry, I'll just share again. So, Ma'am Kulkarni, this will be after the 2 more slides. Can we?
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Sorry. Okay. Now, this is basically the process flow of reporting a POSCO case, child sexual abuse case. Now, what happens is, and again, I mentioned that there is going to be a support system. So under these cases, every person, every police station has a designated support person. Now, this support person can either be a police person or a police woman or a policeman, or it can be also a designated resource person from any NGOs, which has worked for many years. Again, I know because Arpan has had a session with you all. Arpan is such an organization which has worked in this field for many years, and many of their workers are designated support persons. So they assist the child and the family in making the report. So firstly, you have to report the incident to the police under section 19 of the POSCO Act. And here again, remember, no time limit. This local police will have a special juvenile protection unit. That is the person, or that is the police person or designation you need to reach out to when you want to file a police complaint. Okay. Once the complaint has been received, the police is obligated under this act to record the statement of the complainant, the child, or may not be a child now, within 24 hours. And here again, the special juvenile protection unit of the police, concerned police, will be responsible for this. Thereafter, what happens is the child, if a child is in a vulnerable home, for example, very often family members are the abuser. So say a father is an abuser and the mother is economically dependent on the father. So the mother cannot move out, but the child is then constantly under threat. Then the child is taken to a shelter home or a hospital. Firstly, there is going to be a medical examination by a female doctor. And this is basically what we call as FCL. Often the clothes that the child was wearing when the abuse had taken place. There are several other, documentary or evidential resources that one needs. These are examined by the doctor. And this is all done in a very non-invasive and child-friendly way, again, to make sure that the child is calm and not affected. Then after that, the child is taken before a magistrate, a district magistrate. Now, this need not be a judicial magistrate. It can be a district designated special judicial district magistrate, or even a judicial magistrate, to record the statement. This is under section 25 of this act, and also 164 of the CRPC. Now, once the record has been, statement has been recorded, now remember, already the child has given 2 statements, once here and then once before the police and once before the magistrate. So usually for the purpose of adjudicating and determining verifying this case, the 2 statements are compared. But given that they are children, that sort of accuracy and stringent comparing does not take place. If there's any gross change in statement, then it's taken into account. But as long as it's consistent, more or less, this is cleared up. And this is done in a way, along with the support person, that it's not doesn't traumatize the child, because recalling the trauma is a very, very painful process. So usually what happens is the support person just asks, leading questions, but not triggering questions. So that's how a child is asked to open up. And a child is immediately provided with counseling by the child welfare committees. And there are CWCs in every district, and also district child protection unit. So these children, these quasi-judicial bodies are responsible for ensuring that even through this entire process, the child is not sent off to trauma. The CWC, then what they do is, after speaking with the child, arranging for a safe stay, and also, so another thing is that once such complaints are raised, if the person is known to a child, which in most cases it is, the child is often faced under threats, often threatened by the perpetrator that, आप कुछ बोलोगे तो मैं आपके साथ और बुरा करूंगा, that sort of thing, and often threatened to be quiet. So to ensure that the child, it's legally ensured that the child does not see or come into contact with the perpetrator for the longest time, even if the arrest is not taking place. That in this entire course of the legal process, the child is not made to see the perpetrator at all. Now, I'm saying this as a very, matter of fact thing. I'll just mention a case. where a father was sexually abusing the two daughters. Now he was otherwise very affectionate towards them, took care of their habits, took care of their needs, etc. And they did not have a mother because he was sexually abusing them. They started, and because they loved him and he loved them in all other forms, in terms of, he was a good father in terms of taking care of their needs, etc. They thought that this is an accepted form of fatherly love. So when the complaint took place and the father was arrested, the girls were devastated. And because after a lot of counseling, they came to terms with this abuse, and that's when they wanted to proceed further. But one day, while they were in the court, they just caught a glimpse of their father at the sort of witness box, and they just ran towards him and hugged him, and basically they were like, oh, this is our father. So we have to realize that child sexual abuse, while the law lays down these categories, it's not as simple. There are lots of nuances, there are lots of complications, complicated human emotions, and these are children we are talking about. They are not mature. So lots of sensitivity is important, and this is where, as future trainers of special education, future mental health practitioners, counseling plays a very important role. We as lawyers can tell you what the law is, what the legal procedure is, but taking people out of this traumatic situation, assisting them through this, is what is most important. Now, another example is there was a child who has been, sexually abused by his aunt, and he's basically paralyzed from under his his waist under, and his aunt was his primary caregiver. So for a person with that physical disability, his primary caregiver was his abuser. So what happened was, when the aunt was being prosecuted, this person was suffering in terms of a lack or a lapse in his caregiving. So there are all these complications that we need to be mindful of, and it is the state's responsibility to ensure the rehabilitation. So CWC, Child Friendly Court, all these bodies, regulatory bodies, ensure that the person is restored with family, or a fit person who's actually going to take care and make sure that the child is brought back out of that trauma. Shelter homes, counseling, support persons, these are all these requirements which the state is supposed to arrange for. And finally, under section 28 and 33 between 28 to 33 of the Act, all legal procedures have to be child friendly and completed promptly. Okay. And special for children with special needs, there has to be a special educator allotted under section 19 and rule 3 of the Act. So say if there is a case involving a special child, a child with special needs, say someone like you who is equipped to provide special education, you will be designated by the state to become a support person. And this special educator will not only help the child in his or her regular recovery, but also through the court process. So that is another thing that why this act is relevant to you, because this will sort of be a point of contact between you and the child with special needs. So that is going to be designated by the court. And any victim, no matter what stage of the case it is, there is a provision for compensation. In Maharashtra, there is, and this compensation is determined by state. In Maharashtra, there is the Manodhairya compensation. So while the prosecution is going on, the criminal matter is going on, where the accuser is going to be the punishment is going to be determined, the victim can also apply for compensation. It's a monetary compensation, but that is, restored towards or kept aside for the welfare and the future rehabilitation of the child. So this is the entire court process of child sexual abuse. Any questions at this point? I see some chat boxes.
Yeah, somebody's asking whether the parents can lodge a complaint if the child is not willing in spite of that. Who's to take the call?
The call is actually because the child, in this case, anyone under age of 18, their consent is not irrespective, is not considered legally valid. The parents can take a call. I wanted to, we'll discuss this about who is to take a call very shortly. I'd like to just move on to the next part about how to file the complaint. But I will be answering this question in detail because this is something that we need to talk about. And this is where your question can be answered. Mandatory reporting. Now, not the willingness of the child or the information of the child is irrespective here. Because, like I said, anyone under the age of 18, their consent or their opinion is not considered a legal validation. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that the child is going to be forced to do something which they don't want to do. Then that becomes abusive. But in terms of taking or lodging a complaint, this is a legal obligation, and not just upon the parents, upon all of us. Suppose we hear of a child sexual abuse that has taken place or is taking place, and you just hear from it, even you are obligated to report or take up this case. Now, this is a very, very complicated process. It was included to make sure that no case of child abuse goes unreported, but it's very complicated. So suppose as support persons, NGOs who are counseling, they are supposed counseling one person, and out of that counseling process, they end up hearing that, oh, even the brother or the sibling of this victim has been abused. Then, even if the family doesn't want to proceed with it, the NGO has to do it. So anyone who's aware or who finds out that any sort of an incident of child sexual abuse has taken place, you have to report it to the police. Okay. And if you think that if you think that you don't want to get involved, you can tell this police to sort of take a suo moto complaint. As in, you don't have to be involved in this entire process. You can basically just report to the police, but you'll have to make sure that this FIR is not under your name. But if you fail to do that, even providing this information, that can in that you can incur a fine, and that can also lead to a jail time of about 6 months. So mandatory reporting is extremely important, that if you hear of any case and you're reasonably certain, so it's not just mere speculation, you're certain you've seen any of the symptoms that we have seen earlier, and you think that there is enough evidence for you to think that, okay, I think that there is sexual abuse going on, you have to report it to the police. And that is true of any parents also. So a child's consent or opinion does not matter. If a parent comes across an incident of sexual abuse, knows that sexual abuse is taking place, has to. Anyone can file a complaint under POSCO. Doesn't have to be the child who is the complainant. Anyone can file on behalf of the child, and but you have to if you are aware of any incident of sexual abuse. Sometimes you don't want to sort of take the burden of going all the way to a police and doing that. You can file an online complaint to not the police, but to the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, who then will take forward the procedure. In this case, you will not be involved in the legal process. You can also dial National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. NCPCR's number is given, and Child Line, which is the SOS helpline. Just to get immediate assistance, you can dial 1098, which is the helpline for any children-related offenses. You can email the National Commission for Child Protection of Child Rights at the email address given. Or if you want to directly file a police complaint, you can call you can dial 100 and contact your local police station. Now, this link, second. Okay, it's not open. Let it be. So this link basically takes us to the process of filing a complaint with the police or lodging an FIR that we have put it up on Nyaya. What I'll do is I'll paste the link on the chat box. So you'll get a step-by-step guidance for filing any police complaint, not just POSCO. And there is also a mobile app or an address or an opportunity to write a letter to the NCPCR through post. But basically, the main factor is, irrespective of how you choose to do it, you will have to report. Any questions on this? I hope I've been able to answer that question. So Alpa has asked, what if the child has mentioned it once to an adult, but then denies it? The adult has no evidence. Then how does it work in that case? Now, very good question. This is where the testimony or recording evidence comes into play. One thing is that there is going to be, even if you hear once from the child, you are under mandatory obligation to report. Okay. Then if the child if the child say agrees to what the report when the child is being taken to the police and then changes his or her statement before the district magistrate, then there's an entire process of counseling and then trying to get out the truth. If we see that the child is actually making it up and it's not really a true incident, then the case is dismissed. Okay, then there is no, a child is either, usually children are not punished for this, but there might be, if it's a serious fabrication which leads to harassment of another person, child might be sent to, say, the juvenile justice board, but there is no rigorous punishment for a child, say, lying that way. But even then, even if once the child has mentioned it to you, you will have to report. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I'll just quickly take on 2 other questions. Okay, now.
Ma'am, shall I release the poll?
Oh,
yes,
yeah, that's what I was about to say. This is the time, right?
Yes. Oh, what am I doing? 1 second. Yes. Can you please release the poll?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll stop share screen.
Yes, ma'am. I have launched the poll.
Yes. Can you see the poll on your screen, everyone?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. Please answer. We'll just take 2 more minutes and wait for everyone to answer. Okay, I think everyone has answered.
अपने स्क्रीन पे देखिए, आपको पोल दिखाई देगा, यस या नो, इस पे क्लिक करना है. Does it mean only 17 have responded?
That's, I think only 17 has responded.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Just hold on.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. I request all the participants to take this poll. There is only one question, very simple. Either answer yes or no.
Ma'am, we are not able to select yes or no.
Yeah, somebody wrote that.
Yeah, even I am not able to select, ma'am.
So, do you click on the word yes or no?
Ma'am, the poll has closed.
I try to even select and I try to even write it there down, but it's not happening.
Okay, I think the poll has closed. Someone has stopped the poll. I think that's why you're not able to select.
Oh,
Okay, ma'am.
Shall I share the results now or later?
Yeah, please share the results. Can you see the result on your screen?
And there is one more poll, right?
Yes, but that's later.
Yeah, fine. So then that time we'll take it more seriously. I'll request everybody to respond, maybe some technological issue
Correct.
on their part. So let them learn how to do it.
Correct.
Ma'am,
Great.
and they have to take the poll quickly because it is only one question. The time limit is less for one question. That
Yeah,
is why it is
so
getting
next time we'll
closed.
give them heads up before releasing. Yeah, so can you show the result or?
I think the result is done. So shall we
Yes.
go back to our
Yes, we can. Stop
Okay.
sharing it, KK ma'am.
Yeah, I have stopped sharing it.
Okay. I am going to now share my screen. Okay, so I'm very glad that all of you, almost 94% of you said that this was the procedure should be the same, should not be the same as that of adults. I wanted to not to single out anyone, but I just wanted to understand those who said yes. Do you want to tell me why did you think it's yes, or do you can also sort of write on the chat box. This is just to understand. There's no right or wrong answer. This is just to understand why you thought that this should be the same. Anyone?
No, I think we can proceed because time-wise also
Right.
it is 10:15, so
Correct.
maybe 10 more minutes and then we need some 5 minutes for discussion.
Correct. Yeah, I'm just stopping sharing this. Okay. So, the reason why some of you may have selected yes is because one might think that, the court procedure, the justice delivery mechanism should be the same for everyone. But the reason why court has decided that we need special courts for this, the law decided that in POSCO, is because the sensitivity of the issue. Okay, because the children, like from the examples that I took, children, it's not a straightforward sort of a situation. Children are vulnerable. These are the trusted people who have abused their trust. So they don't know how to open up. They don't have the proper understanding or proper definition of the situation. To make them feel safe and comfortable, these special procedures are in place, and it also enables them to get rehabilitation fast. So for anyone, and as special educators, if you ever work with children with special needs who are undergoing abuse, you should know that the special court will ensure that there is a presence of a trusted person through the entire process. It can be you also, as someone who is a special educator and has a relationship with the child. And it's there to ensure that there is no extra strain or stress put on the child in this entire process. And the child's identity is never, under no circumstances, revealed. This is very important. The child has to be protected from the accused. So the accused, till the time the entire case is ongoing, the child does not come into contact or see the accused at all. And the public, no identity about the child is revealed to the public. So unless the person is involved in the case or in the rehabilitation of the child, you cannot mention the name of the child. Even in POSCO orders, the name of the child or the parent, no identifiable markers is given. It's only, sometimes baby X, baby Y, that sort of, or a child X, child Y is used. So sometimes when, organizations, in order to raise awareness, they try to create, say, videos, presentations, or documentaries. Even then, the face of the child, the name of the child has to be blackened or has to be made ambiguous. So under no circumstances, even if you have a good intention, you cannot reveal the identity of a child. And if you accidentally do, there are certain legal obligations or certain legal repercussions that you will face. Okay, so identity of the child has to be protected. That is not the case of the accused. You can take the accused name in connections of any sexual POSCO case, but it's preferred that identity is kept is not publicly revealed. One more process, which again is relevant to you all as special educators, is that the lawyer cannot, unlike other trials, the lawyer cannot question the child directly. The special court or the special educator or the support person who's designated by the court will be asking the child the questions, because the evidence is usually recorded in form of like a story or a very comfortable, familiar situation. And there under no way there can be any character assassination or any sort of pressure given on the child. Just to take the example that a child lied first or denied later, even if there is inconsistency in the child's testimonial, that there cannot be any sort of painting of his character that, oh, he always lies, so he may have lied these. Okay, who plans these questions? These questions are decided by the counsel, the lawyers, but the lawyer cannot ask these questions directly. These are given to the support person, and the support person answers. Often the magistrate intervenes, and magistrate also has some questions to ask because again, it's a criminal trial, right? So even then, here also the whatever interaction happens, it will happen through the support person or the designated special court. Sometimes because the magistrate or the judge is trained to deal with these questions or deal with these cases, sometimes the judge can ask questions, but not the lawyers. This sort of checks and balances there in order to protect children or any other person from wrongful persecution. This is rare, but this should not be taken as a rule. But in some exceptional situations, what happens is teenage love is punished. For example, two teenage, one girl and a boy, both say 16 or 17-year-old, they engage in a sexual relationship, and the parents find out. In order to sort of teach them a lesson, they usually put a charge of POSCO on the boy. Okay, now the boy is also a minor, and this was consensual. But since the law doesn't recognize consent, it still, in the eyes of law, will be a crime. But then what happens is these sorts of questioning, this sort of trial will determine whether this was actually abuse or not. So then the punishment of that boy would be determined by the Juvenile Justice Board, which would be much milder, and it would not be as harsh as that in case of a genuine POSCO case. Here they will probably have to undergo that sort of a judicial system or judicial chagrin, if I may say that, because anyone or in getting involved in any sexual relationship under 18 is considered a crime. But if it's if it's consensual, then the court usually tries to consider or have a more extenuating approach in giving out the punishment. But in other POSCO cases, it's a lot more rigorous, as a result of which this whole special procedure in the court cases and the questioning is very important. Is this okay?
Yes, I guess we can proceed. Yeah.
Great. Now, in the interest of time, what I'll do is I want to quickly touch upon two other. Now, we largely spoke about sexual abuse of children and the need for protecting them. And again, to reiterate that all these provisions are valid for children with disability. Another form of abuse, which is very rampant now because internet is being used largely by every child. Like right now, from a toddler to an 18-year-old is using internet. Online abuse of children is becoming very, very rampant. Okay, so the law punishes anyone who uses children in any form of media for sexual gratification, which is basically representing a child's sexual organs, using children engaged in real or simulated sexual acts, indecent or obscene representation of children, and the law does not recognize consensual sexual relationships between minors. So even the whole thing about children or teens using internet to sort of exchange sexually explicit conversation, that is also punishable. As you can see in this image, she says we actually have been sexting for the past few months, for the past few days. This, although it's a common practice, it is unfortunately punishable. So if you're under 18, any sort of sexual interaction will be punished. But other than that, online abuse takes place in various forms: social media, WhatsApp, Zoom classes, etc. Mostly these platforms have anti-abuse policy, so you must firstly report and block. But children's faces, children's videos are often misused for threatening, which is called cyberbullying, for stalking, for sort of being morphed for sort of indecent representation. And these are all examples of cybercrime. And one needs to file a criminal complaint either with the local police or cyber investigation cell. Now, this is a non-exhaustive list because internet is evolving and cyber crimes are evolving. But if you see, children's WhatsApp chats, faces, are being used for any sort of misrepresentation, misinformation, please firstly block and report on the platform, and then file a complaint with the cyber cell. You can file it online also. The National Cyber Cell has a provision for online complaining as well. Now, another thing is that because online abuse happens in so many novel forms, and because children are increasingly parts of, engaging in social media, say a TikTok or a Snapchat, where they record videos. So if people use these videos to sort of create pornographic material, or stalk them, threat them, or abuse them, sometimes fat shaming becomes a huge problem. People are bullied for how they look, how they speak, how they carry themselves. These are all examples of online harassment, and they are punishable by law. And this is particularly important for, say, any child with any visible disability. If one is doing any sort of, say, live video chats, and there are trolls and complaints and harassing comments, that can also be complained against. And this is basically also an integral part of child safety. Is this all right?
Yeah, I guess we will have to move towards winding up now.
Cool. I just want to quickly touch upon another aspect of child protection, is that child law, child labor. So the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Act and anti-child law, child labor law says that anyone under below the age of 14 cannot be employed as a child except in a family business. That too, if one is above the age of 14 and 18. And they cannot be made to work in any hazardous or dangerous situation. For example, if the family business is that of making crackers, the child cannot be employed. But only certain non-hazardous occupations, as a child artist, etc., they can be employed. But even then, there are all these examples or all these provisions of safety that one needs to take care of. These are some sort of, this is just an overview about, let's ignore that poll because we don't have time, we can do it at the end. These are some of the facts about the child labor law. And if you employ someone under the age of 14, what happens? Finally, refocusing on children with disabilities. About 7.8 million children under the age of 19 live with disabilities, and the UN conventions say that children with disabilities are doubly affected. In India, everything we discuss today are relevant to children with disabilities, but specifically the Right to Education Act, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act of 2016, and the Mental Healthcare Act of 2017 are 3 acts which specifically focus on the rights of children with disabilities. Quickly to say what are the rights guaranteed under the Right to Education Act. Right to Education Act. Every school will have 25% quota of seats for children with special needs, and constitutionally it is guaranteed that no sort of discrimination in terms of grading, in terms of behavior, in terms of peer pressure can be given on the child with disabilities. Under the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, it's mentioned that the child will not be given any sort of, will not be separated from the parent if the need is as such at any cost. There will be a support person. There will be special education and special infrastructural requirements instructed in public places to make the ease of commuting better. And under the Mental Health Care Act, every child with special needs will have to, the Mental Health Care Act of 2017 entitles every child to get the special help that they need in their schooling, in their rehabilitation, and going forward in their restoration of rights. So there are, I can send links for, detailed explanation of these rights on the link. And again, I encourage you to come to www.nyaya.org if you have any further questions, and you can also reach out to us on the helpline to understand any specific rights. But more or less, the theme is that children with disabilities are protected under POSCO, under the Child Labor Act, and the Child Right to Education, the Disabilities Act, and the Mental Health Care Act. So they are an integral part of our society, and there is no way that they can be discriminated against on account of their disabilities. If anything, extra care, the state mandates extra care, extra provisions to be taken to ensure that they are comfortable and they lead a fruitful life. So that's, I think, the end of my presentation. I'll just
Thank you, ma'am.
Any questions? We can take a couple of questions. Sheetal, did we miss any of the chat box question, or right now if anybody wants?
No, Yashasvi ma'am has taken up all the questions.
Okay.
I
Great.
think there is one.
Yeah.
I need to check.
Just take a minute. Meanwhile, I just have a doubt. In your first slide, you have given the statistics, some 219, I guess, daily cases. Is that in Maharashtra, India, or that's a global?
That's an India record. That's from NCRP. 129 POSCO cases between 2019 to 2020.
Oh.
Yeah. So
when the new worries, when the new NCRP survey happens, we are all prepared to see an inflation, because during the lockdown, abuses have increased a lot.
Yeah, true.
So I guess this is from the question is from Sarah, not the question. If child can't forget trauma of sexual abuse for lifetime, punishment can't be justified with just comment. This is what the Sarah said.
I agree, Sarah. This is true that the trauma, there's no cause for the trauma that the child has undergone. But often, but I think that's true of most offenses. So even in murder cases, often the family of the departed says that we will not get that person back. The trauma, what do I do about it? What do we do about it? But often, but this is, in the larger interest, if you see, this will be a deterrent. A strict, rigorous punishment. If we know that okay, the law is punishing a person who has caused this crime, committed this crime so harshly, perhaps 4 to 5 people will be deterred from doing this. That's the whole point of law, law and order. But it's right, the trauma, the cost of trauma is unbearable. Here again, special education and counseling plays a huge role in comforting them, in actually taking back the children into their mainstream. Actually, many of the spokespersons for child rights now were abused themselves, so they've overcome that trauma with the help of education, counseling, and now they're standing up for the rights for others. So I think that's something to look forward to.
I think there is, thank you, ma'am. And I think there is one more. What if the child has mentioned it once to an adult, not a parent, but then denies? Okay, I guess we have done this.
Yeah.
The adult has no evidence, then how does it work in that case?
Evidence is again, like I said, the statement recording is when it comes at the evidence stage. If you have any information, if you know of any account of an information, and like I said, reasonable, you have reasonable cause to believe that, okay, this has taken place. Again, remember the symptoms that we had spoken about, bearing that, and if you are able to sort of get these sort of validating evidence from, not evidence, but certain conversations or information that the child is giving is validating your doubt, then just report. Whether it is true or not, or to be proven, is the court's responsibility. You don't have to worry about that, but you have to report.